Cedar Falls Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting for Wednesday, December 14th. I would ask for a roll call from Karen, please.
Chrisman,
Present.
Grivovich,
Here.
Hartley. Mr. Hartley's absent tonight. Larson,
Here.
Leeper. Brad was going to join us on the phone. I didn't know if he was on the phone yet. Brad, are you on the phone? So not yet. Lynch,
Here.
Moser.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll go ahead and move into the meeting, or the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Is there any comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll go into public comment. If there's any comment from the public that would like to come up, you are more than welcome to do so at this time, and this would be for anything that's not on the agenda this evening. All right, seeing none, we will go into our regular business here. We are in old business. We're going to go into our first one, which is a public hearing on rezoning to R4 with new zoning agreement for Midway Business Park. And Chris, you're going to take that.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, commissioners, public. Okay, this is a public hearing for the for a new zoning agreement for the Midway Business Park, which sits east of Cedar Heights Drive and north of Green Hill Road. You'll see up on the screen. And it's on Green Hill Circle. It comes off of Green Hill Road. It is a subdivision with 9 lots on it, and it was originally zoned R4 in 1995 when the original zoning agreement was executed. And the request that we have is for lots 5 and 6, the Oak Park Estates Assisted Living would like to build another assisted living facility on those lots, and there is a restriction in the original zoning agreement that that does not allow the assisted living facility use. Lots 5 and 6 are the lots that are highlighted on the screen. One of the reasons we're discussing this again is, well, we had discussed this back in September, and there was an issue with the original zoning agreement that was discovered, where the legal description of the land was there was an error in the legal description, and since that had been discovered, we are proposing that a new zoning agreement, instead of amending that original agreement, that a new zoning agreement be executed. And so it's relatively straightforward. Staff recommends approval of a rezoning of the business park to R4, utilizing the correct legal description. Staff also recommends approval of a new zoning agreement associated with the rezoning of the Midway Business Park to R4 that restricts the land uses to professional offices, nursing homes, and assisted living facilities. As part of this action, the resolutions approving the 1994 agreement and the 2018 amendment will be rescinded.
Thank you, Chris. So we will move into, would anybody from the applicant like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, we will go into public comment. Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission, and we'll close the public hearing.
So I would need a motion to open our discussion on this, fellow commissioners. Otherwise, we can make a motion as well to move this forward.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been motioned and seconded. We'll go ahead and do a vote. Karen?
Any discussion? Okay. Chrisman,
Aye.
Grubevich? Aye. Larson,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Mr. Leeper, are you on the phone yet? No. Okay, that motion carries.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, we'll move into our next item of old business, which is just a continuation, I'm guessing, Chris, but public hearing, rezoning lots 1 through 4 of Midway Second Edition. We'll let you keep going.
Correct. So, as part of that process of this new zoning agreement, the previous zoning agreement actually encompassed a little bit larger of an area that included this Lovejoy cul-de-sac that you'll see up on the screen. It's 4 lots that are currently zoned R4 and were restricted to single-family uses, where the R4 allows several other uses, professional offices, assisted living, that kind of thing. So in this instance, the city is proposing, instead of including these lots in the new zoning agreement, it'll be much cleaner to rezone these lots to R1, similar to the rest of the neighborhood to the north. That way they will be regulated just the same as the rest of the neighborhood and won't be encumbered by the zoning agreement. So pretty straightforward. So staff recommends approval of a rezoning of the subject properties from R4 to R1.
Thanks, Chris. Again, would the applicant like to speak to this item? Seeing none, would there like to be any public comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this. Bring it back to the commission. Is there any discussion? And I would need a motion for that discussion if we would like. Otherwise, we can make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Fantastic. Motion and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right, we will go to a vote.
Chrisman,
Aye.
Grubevich? Aye. Larson,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Fantastic. All right, we'll move on to number 4 for the evening in old business. So this is a site plan review of the triplex on Lot 4, Hannah Park Commercial Edition. Michelle's going to be taking that.
I'm
So-
going to recuse myself from this, and if we don't have quorum, does it get deferred?
So I just got a text from Brad. He's going to be calling in, so we'll have a quorum in the room, and with Brad can call in.
Okay, I'll be back.
So we'll need to wait. Maybe we can skip, if it's okay with the commission. You want to vote to skip to item number 5 first? We can take care of that.
Fantastic. Is that all right with the fellow commissioners? Fantastic. All right, we'll move to new business. Item 5, which is the Southwest Cedar Falls Urban Renewal Plan, and Shane will be taking that for us.
Thank you. Good evening. Shane Graham, Economic Development Coordinator for the city. What's before the Planning Commission tonight is a request for approval of a new Southwest Cedar Falls Urban Renewal Plan. The city is proposing to create a new urban renewal area, and I will get to that here shortly. This slide, so this encompasses about 76 acres. It's located just to the south of the city's existing industrial park. We are proposing to include this into a new urban renewal area. What that does is allows the city then to utilize TIF funds to repay for any sort of development costs, things like that. With this property, the city does have an offer to purchase it, so it will be for future industrial growth for the city. So where the Planning and Zoning Commission comes in on this is the state code, chapter 403.5 of the state code states that prior to its approval of an urban renewal plan, the local governing body shall submit such a plan to the Planning Commission for review and recommendations as to its conformity with the general plan for the development of the municipality. Basically what that's saying is it in conformance with the comprehensive plan of the city? And we'll get to that in just a second. So what the Planning Commission, we're looking tonight is for a recommendation on that to City Council, and the City Council hearing for this has been set for January 3rd. So with the comprehensive plan, the Cedar Falls Comprehensive Plan was adopted in May of 2012. Goals within that plan include expanding and enhancing the commercial and industrial base, supporting new businesses through economic development programs, repairing aging infrastructure, and expanding technology infrastructure to attract business and industry. Those are just several of the goals that were listed. The document's much larger than that. So, looking at the future land use map, which is part of the comprehensive plan, you can see the area in purple is all listed as future industrial, which does include this entire property. You can see there's some areas outside the city limits that were included in the future land use map. Even some time ago was shown as future industrial growth areas. So this entire property is shown as industrial, which would be the future proposed use of this property. Some of the objectives that are listed in the proposed plan include stimulating private investment in new commercial and industrial development, plan and provide for sufficient land for commercial and industrial development, provide for the installation of public infrastructure, utilities, roads, things like that, use of various government incentives to provide a marketable and attractive investment climate, achieve a well-balanced economy, and develop a sound economic base. So with that, so based on the goals and designated future land uses listed in the comprehensive plan, staff finds that the proposed objectives and activities of the proposed Southwest Cedar Falls Urban Renewal Plan are in conformance with that general plan. Therefore, staff does recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission find that the proposed Southwest Cedar Falls Urban Renewal Plan is in conformance with the Cedar Falls Comprehensive Plan, and then recommend approval of that and forward that to City Council for their public hearing on January 3rd. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Shane. Assuming that you are the applicant, we can perhaps skip that step and we'll open it up for public comment if there's no questions for Shane. All right, we'll open this up for public comment. Anybody that would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, we will bring it back to the commission. We're looking for a recommendation here, so there would need to be approval of that so we can have any discussion.
I move to approve the plan.
Second.
Fantastic. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion on this?
I do just think it is worth noting again that as we expand industrial use, which will likely create new jobs, it's important that we have housing for those jobs. And if we're going to be bringing in new people in our community that are working, that we have affordable housing to meet their needs. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward with expanding our industrial space.
Any other discussion? All right, it's been motioned and seconded. We'll go ahead and go into a vote. Karen?
Chrisman?
Aye.
Grubevich? Aye. Larson?
Aye.
Leeper? I believe Mr. Leeper's on the phone now. Brad, can you hear us?
Aye.
Very good.
Aye.
Thank you, Brad. Lynch?
Aye.
Moser?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Fantastic. Okay, we will go back to old business, and that site plan review of the triplex on Lot 4 at Hannah Park Commercial Edition. Kyle?
I'm recusing from both items 4 and 6.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, Michelle, take her away.
Thank you, Commissioners. So the applicant Kyle Larson proposes a new triplex at the corner of Valley High Drive and Cedar Heights Drive. There we go. The parcel is within the C1 Commercial Zoning District. Residential uses are allowed within the C1 Commercial District if reviewed by the and Zoning Commission, and approved by a city council. As listed in the staff report, one of the conditions is that the future land use map is supportive of the residential uses. The future land use map, or comprehensive plan map, was amended in 2021 to change this area to medium density residential. Each of the units will consist of 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and 3-car garage. The lot is also within the 500-year floodplain. Development is allowed within the 500-year floodplain as long as it meets the 1 foot above the base floor elevation. The setbacks for a commercial residential use in the commercial zoning district has to meet the R4 zoning requirements. An applicant proposes a 25-foot front setback, a 25-foot side yard setback, and over 30 feet rear setback. 3 parking spaces for each unit is required and provided. The landscaping that's slightly shown on this screen is consistent with the residential uses in the neighborhood. The engineering division has reviewed the stormwater report and found the proposal meets the stormwater requirements. The applicant proposes a 1-story triplex with a hip roof, large front windows, front-facing garages, and a front door recessed from the street. Staff recommends approval of the site plan with the conditions as listed on the screen, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Would anyone from the applicant like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the floor up for public comment. Anybody that would like to speak to this item, go ahead and come up.
Oh, and I forgot to add, there is a public comment from Pat Burke of pictures of the surrounding neighborhood to enter into the record.
Thank you, Michelle. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, we will bring it back to the commission. We're going to need a motion and a second on approval of this.
So, Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about the stormwater management? You said it meets the requirements, but it sounds like there's been some issues. Could you just talk about, has the applicant discussed that? Do they have plans to mitigate the problem? Anything like that?
So a part of our requirements is that the parcel has to, any stormwater that leaves the parcel has to meet our 2-year requirements for existing development for a 100-year event. And that is the criteria that engineering used to review the stormwater plan that was submitted.
We do have the applicant's engineer here. Oh, not on this one. Oh. So I was thinking we had the engineer here to respond to that.
Yeah, I can answer any questions.
Okay. Step up to the mic, your name and address for the record.
Larry Kuzman, Clapsaddle Garber Associates, 3029 Rainbow Drive.
So do you think that the stormwater issue now that the neighbors are having is just due to there not being something on the property, or is building these homes going to mitigate that issue?
I'm not aware of any stormwater issues the neighbors are having. We designed it based on the existing property and how the pre-developed release rates are and the fully developed release rates, and to retain a 100-year storm event.
Okay.
So maybe you could describe how the stormwater works and where it flows to?
Currently it flows to the creek behind it and then flows southwards to the southwest. We can only control anything that's at the top of the bank of the creek. There's no reason, we can't control anything in the creek itself. So we can't do anything down there. That's all considered uncontrolled runoff. But yeah, we're detaining a 100-year storm event, so, and releasing at a 2-year pre-developed rate.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. If there's no other comments, we will need a motion to approve. And a second.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion. Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote.
Chrisman,
Aye.
Ribovich, aye. Leeper,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Great. All right, we'll go ahead and move into new business again with item number 6, the preliminary plat of Hidden Pines. And Michelle, you're going to take that one as well.
Thank you. Mr. Larson proposes a preliminary plat near the intersection of Green Hill Road and Cedar Heights Drive. The parcel is within the R2 zoning district. The preliminary plat consists of 43 residential lots, 6 tracts, 2 are remain for stormwater, and 4 for right-of-way, and 1 outlot to be retained by the neighboring property. The developer proposes the development to be constructed in 2 phases. From the last conversation staff had with the developer, they hope to have the construction drawings approved by spring and start grading once the weather allows the work to be done, and hope to be completed with phase 1 by the end of the summer. They also hope, if the market allows, to have phase 2 start at the end of the summer. The lots are ranging from 7,000 to 20,000 square feet in size. The applicant proposes a possibility of 4 duplexes with lots on the west of Luke Street to be developed as duplexes or further by attached lots if the market is supportive of that development. The project will also extend Cedar Avenue, Luke Street, Mark and Matthew Drives, and add additional future stub of Charlie Lane that will go to the south property. The applicant has coordinated with the city of Waterloo. Waterloo has submitted a letter stating that they have no objections to the street extensions and the stormwater connections to the city of Waterloo. The stormwater will drain from each of the lots into one of the 2 stormwater facilities. The water from overflow of the track C, which is the one that's northern stormwater facility, will have a drainage out to track C, which is the lower southern stormwater facility, and that will be released, any overflow will be released to Matthew Drive within Waterloo. As part of the connection to the public sanitary sewer, the sewer will be extending from Huntington Road to Hidden Pines through an off-site easement. The easement will need to be revised to include the city as a beneficiary. The easement will also need to be approved by City Council as a separate item. There are known wetlands on the property near the intersection of Matthew Drive and Luke Street. The applicant proposes to mitigate the wetlands to 0.421 and adds landscaping, wetland-specific landscaping around the stormwater facility on track F. While there is a park within a half mile within the city of Waterloo, the applicant also proposes an open space, which is shown in the green, to be used for the residents. With the new amendments of the subdivision, critical infrastructure is considered as part of the development of the subdivision and looking at the phasing approach. The applicant proposes to extend Luke Street and connect to Cedar Avenue to provide access to Green Hill Road. The extending the sewer sanitary sewer through an offsite easement is one of the first things they'll have to do. And then both of the stormwater facilities will also be developed in phase 1. They are also providing traffic calming to the intersections of Matthew and Mark Drives on Luke Street, and they'll reduce the pavement width from 31 feet to 26 feet. And with that, staff recommends gathering comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission and the public and continue the discussion to the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting with the following conditions proposed. And staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Would anybody from the applicant like to speak to this item? Name and address for the record, please.
I'm Nate Cass with Fairgram Engineering and Environmental. We're at 205th Avenue Southeast in Cedar Rapids. And I'm really just here to answer questions, I guess. I know stormwater is a big concern. I believe there was one written comment that was received indicating a drainage issue right along the very east side of this development. That will actually be in the location of the larger detention pond on the south side. So I think that will inherently get taken care of with construction. The overall site is relatively flat, so I'm not surprised at all that there may be a pocket here or there. Obviously, the wetlands were already identified as some larger areas, so I think it's that type of thing will just inherently go away with the construction. All my notes you've already touched on, so I think unless there's any other questions or comments, I'm here to help.
I've only been on the commission for a year, and so I haven't ever dealt with wetland stuff, and I'm just curious about what that mitigation entails when you talk about wetland mitigation.
Sure. And it's not designed yet, so this is subject to change.
Okay.
But it would essentially be specific native vegetation that will be graded very flat such that it will retain, retain some runoff. We're proposing to place it very strategically, since the north pond will remain a wet bottom pond. We're going to call it a forebay, so that it will actually catch that water before it runs into that pond. That'll slow the water down. Any silt or anything that's in that would then get captured and held in that forebay and clean that water, allow the sediment to filter out, and any, whether it's oils or heavy metals or things like that, would filter like a wetland would before it would enter into that pond.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
And if there are future issues with this development in that, after you start building and then you notice that the water is not being resolved, are there any plans to take care of that or to continue to maintain that space to make sure that that doesn't happen?
The area specifically that was commented on?
Yeah.
It's, again, since it's going to be occupied by that detention pond, I really think that it will be inherently taken care of.
Great.
But it is something that, because we're aware of it, we'll make doubly sure that that is addressed.
Great.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there any public comments on this item? If so, go ahead and come up to the podium. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Pat Burke, 1406 Asbury Lane, Waterloo, Iowa, 50701. And Michelle, I sent the pictures in for this item here.
Correct. My apologies. I had thought they were for the last.
That's fine. It was last minute.
Yes, and there's a copy in on this dais as well.
I'd kind of like to speak to what is page 84, where the sewer easement goes through. We live to the east of the Clark lot that's referred to. And then on the west side would be Millennium and that property over there. That's multi-use zoned over there, but it's all R2 structures in there. And where we're at in Central Heights, even though we're zoned R3 were all R2 structures. In fact, I about right up back to the back of this property. And even though I wouldn't be here tonight, but the sewer is going through right next door to us. So my condo's a one-story building. And we're worried about what's gonna happen if we put the storm sewer over in the Waterloo, which is fine, but does that, then it opens up this whole area to go down, you can put another storm sewer in along with the sewer pipe running down to Huntington. Well, this is zoned R4, this track here. And would you entertain that a person could put up 2-story apartment buildings and stuff right next to, even though it's multi-unit, and I'm an R3 zone, but it's really R2 buildings. Would you put 2-story apartments right next to it?
Would staff like to answer?
So the property to the south is not the subject of this particular subdivision. The parcel to the south is fairly narrow, so there could be some development of that property with the sewer going through it. They'd be able to tap into the sewer there for development, but I think the scale of the buildings, I mean, they'd have to meet all the parking requirements and everything, so I think just given the size of the property and the fact that there's a street running down through the middle, it'd have to be fairly small buildings in order to meet all those requirements. And they have to have a rear setback and meet all the setback requirements as well.
Yeah, there'd be approximately 110 feet on each side of the Charlie Lane.
Right, right.
So would you be able to put an apartment building in there, and would you put it right next to my 1-story duplex?
So I think we can't really speculate about what could be because there's been nothing proposed there. So if there were something proposed there, you of course, neighbors would get notified and you'd have an opportunity to comment on whatever was being proposed, but it's hard for us to speculate what could happen here. The R4 zone does allow for apartment buildings.
I understand I'm out over in front of my skis a little bit here tonight, but by taking the stormwater into Waterloo, then does that help? Mr. Clark is party to this easement, so does that enable him to have more storm runoff because Waterloo took it, and then the other neighbors in Waterloo are gonna, because we took the stormwater, we're gonna suffer undesirable consequences of having that height of building right next to us.
So whatever's proposed for that property would have to be reviewed and meet the same engineering standards and stormwater runoff standards. So they would have to propose their own stormwater facilities and manage their own stormwater. So they would not be able to release more stormwater than what is currently running on the properties around it just as runoff of a field. So that would have to be reviewed at the time anything was developed.
Right.
So that probably has nothing to do with this particular subdivision. It's handling its own water through their own stormwater basins.
Well, if he's got a sanitary easement, he could probably get a stormwater easement to run it down to Huntington.
Yeah, a lot of times there's storm sewer then in the road, so there would be probably a road that would run north-south. But like I said, this is all kind of speculation, not related to the item that's on the agenda tonight.
Well, has anything ever been discussed about that property? Has the owner indicated any desire to what he might do with that?
We haven't received any application for that property.
Well, this could happen tomorrow, or it could happen 5 years from now, but I guess I'd like you to take my potential concerns into consideration, that however it might be handled once something might come up.
Will do. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you for your time.
You bet. Anyone else for public comment? Please state name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Dan. I live at 1438 Asbury Lane, just down the street from Pat. I was a former HOA president over there and a retired safety environmental manager. With all due respect to the engineering study, I just want to be able to make sure that, you know, our area down there where we live is going to be able to handle the runoff. Can you answer to me if you can say that this is definitely going to be an area of runoff that won't affect us downstream? I mean, we're at a point, I did my own study when I was president because we had water up at our back door a couple different times when we had some heavy rains. And I walked the sewers out in the rain, and I cleaned up the pond down there because nobody had ever cleaned up that runoff pond. The filtration was bad off of there. So one of the things I want to know is where do we stand when our sewers are full right now? And now we're talking about another plat with 43 homes. Another concern is traffic. We're talking about 43 homes, and we're going to probably have an additional 160 people up there. So you're probably looking at maybe 80 cars. You divide that over to Luke and over to Heartland, and that'll feed back down through Matthew and Mark, and then you're talking about narrowing streets. I don't understand that concept, but I'm getting a little bit belabored here. I kind of want to go back to the water thing and give Mr. I'm sorry, I forget your name. Nate. Give Nate just a quick minute here to answer my question, if you could.
Go ahead and come up to the podium.
With all due respect.
We're meeting the City of Cedar Falls runoff requirements, which is to take the pre-existing 100-year event and detain that and release it at a 2-year post-development rate. So we theoretically are reducing that by a large amount as far as what would run off.
So you're saying what's up there will be actually reduced coming our direction?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Now,
that makes sense.
as in life, there's no guarantees.
Yeah,
If the system
that's where I'm coming
fails,
from.
if the system fails, there is an overflow that would go, but there would have to be a significant failure of the drainage system for that overflow to actually engage, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's think of a big bathtub, if the drain plugs,
And
it
that-
has to go somewhere.
And that would be where? Back to the
It would-
second pond? Would mitigate that?
It would overland flow into the streets, so that may be Matthew or it may be Mark,
Okay,
depending on what part of the system would fail.
yeah,
And it would theoretically run down the street
okay.
and into the existing storm sewer.
Part of the problem back there where we're at is on Asbury, there's no curb and gutter. So that's part of my problems with, you know, more property being built out. I mean, I think progress is great, but I just want to make sure it's done correctly, you know?
We followed city ordinances and it's been reviewed by city staff
Yeah.
and they concurred with our calculations and preliminary designs.
Okay,
So it's been vetted. We feel that it's solid, so
all right.
Thank you, Nate.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nate.
Did you do a traffic study back there by chance?
we did.
And how do you feel about the additional traffic going down through there?
We
And,
think most of it is going to go to Luke
Mm-hmm.
and north-south from there. Just because of distance, east and west, we think most of it's gonna go to Luke.
Okay, so with Heartland, you know, there's parking on one side of that street. I know you're from Cedar Rapids, but anyway, there's parking on one side. And when you come down to Heartland, a lot of times you've got to sit at that intersection to wait for somebody to come around the corner or, you know, traffic either direction. So, you know, people have to realize that that's about as much as that can handle right now. So I guess that's my concern, because I run in and back and forth on Heartland a lot, and it's a tough street, and I think the city should probably eliminate parking over there just to handle the extra flow from what you guys are putting in here to mitigate a future accident. Just a consideration. That's all I have. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Nate.
You bet.
Is there any other public comment? Go ahead and come up. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Charles Camerata. I live at 4050 Matthew Drive. I'm the last house on Matthew Drive. I've lived there for 25 years. And when you mentioned there's no wetlands in that area, I don't know where they got their information, because there's been ducks and water sitting for all those years. And they dug a trench trying to drain it all the way down to near Matthew Drive. And why dump all that water on Matthew Drive? When you say there isn't a wetland, what do you mean by that?
Nate, if you want to come and address, but if we can have everybody address the commission, that would be super helpful. So go ahead and come up, Nate.
So to determine a wetland, it requires three things. It has to have a certain type of soil, which is called hydric soil. It has to have a certain type of vegetation, which would be hydric vegetation. And it has to have the presence of water for a certain period of time throughout the year. And that's consistent. Clearly that can fluctuate with whether you have a drought or a wet year and so on. But those three items are what qualify anything as a wetland.
Okay, so it is a wetland right now,
Thanks, Nate.
because there's water sitting year round. There's ducks and all kinds of wild animals in there, including deer and raccoons and fox, and you name it. It's just a wild area. Well, when you say you're going to dump the water onto Matthew Drive, that concerns me. And you have retention ponds. And you mentioned something about dumping the water from the retention pond onto Matthew Drive. What do you mean by that?
Again, if we can make sure and address the commission as we're going here. Go ahead, Nate. Thank you.
So the normal stormwater discharge from the detention would enter into the storm sewer, so it would not surface flow. When I mentioned that it could drain onto Matthew, that would be if the drainage system failed and the pond filled up and then overflowed. So that would be an emergency situation.
So
it would only be under a normal system failure.
So the drainage would actually come through an underground pipe over to the existing Waterloo storm sewer?
Correct.
I don't foresee that to be a problem unless we had a tremendous amount of rain. You know, so it's okay, you're clear on that. The other issue that the gentleman brought up is parking. Right now, as he mentioned, Heartland has one side parking only on the street. In the wintertime, when the plows come through, they leave, you know, they don't push it back over the curb. And there's a buildup of snow all the way on both sides. They're up against the cars that are parked there and the existing curb on the east side of the street. So when cars come up there in the summertime, they wait for an existing car to come because some people don't get over far enough and they're afraid of getting sideswiped. And this is constant because that street is narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And when they mentioned about, they made a study and they're going to reduce it from 31 feet, I believe, to 26 feet, something like that. How can you justify that when there's already a parking problem, and there's not only a parking problem, but existing cars trying to get by each other on that street? It's a hazard. In the wintertime, when that snow builds up, it's one lane. Have you ever tried to drive that? No, you live in Cedar Rapids. And I'm not picking on you, but you make a study. You don't live there. You don't know what it's like. It's terrible in the wintertime. So when you make this proposal to narrow a street, that's ridiculous.
Thank you, Charles. Appreciate it. We'll take that into consideration and discussion for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that's ridiculous.
so I'd just like to
Yep, go
clarify,
ahead.
the street, and Nate can confirm this, the street is 31 feet wide. The only place that it narrows is at the intersections, and that is intended to slow the traffic down at the intersection. We don't want to be Luke Street to be a big runway where people are speeding. So the only place that it narrows to 26 feet is right at the intersection, and then it widens back out to 31 feet.
How far does that go? I mean, where it starts to be 26 to where it ends and goes back to 31. How far, what distance is that?
You know, I think Nate could probably answer that, but I think it's just at the intersection. Is that right,
Well,
Nate?
you say the intersection. How far back from the intersection?
For easy numbers, it would be approximately 100 feet at the end of the T intersection. So
So that's kind of,
effectively from end of radius to end of radius.
so that would
There's a
incorporate
taper
the
in
first
there.
two lots on that corner. Because the lot size is what, 60 feet? Width?
No, it would be just, say not even half or roughly half of each of those lots, not even the entire width of the lot. It's because it would be centered on the street itself, so you have the 60 feet of right-of-way that will take up the majority of that.
And also, if we can go to this PowerPoint, I do have those areas highlighted in blue.
Well, I know there was another area I wanted to cover. Oh, I know what it is. Right now, my property butts up against Cedar Falls. You step a foot and a half off my property, my driveway, and you're in Cedar Falls. So my concern is somebody's gonna build right next to me. What, there's no easement or anything to keep them away from my property line? Or can they build their property right next to my property line?
Would staff like to answer that, or Nate?
There will be a side setback of 10% where the house can, from the property line, and that's our standard setback.
Well, if that lot size is 60 feet, that really cuts down their size. So can they put a driveway right next to it then, and will that be okay? Are they gonna permit a driveway right next to my driveway?
Driveways have to be set back 3 feet? 3 feet.
I don't like that. Well, we'll see where it goes from here because there's gonna be more meetings. Are they gonna notify all the adjacent property owners about the next meeting?
So this will be continued to the next meeting. So
How do I know that though? Are you gonna notify me? Do I
well,
know where to come here and listen?
the letters that were sent out indicated there were 2 meetings, so that was the notification. So you're free to let anybody else know that, you know, it's always at the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which will be December 28th. They meet every 2 weeks on a Wednesday.
Because when I received this letter, I don't know when you decide to send out the letter. I received it yesterday. Didn't give me much notice to do anything.
Well, and this is just an introduction, so we'll be able to have an opportunity on the 28th as well. So as Karen mentioned, you are more than welcome to invite neighbors to join you and have them.
If I wouldn't, I guess my point is, why did you wait so long to notify me? Do you do your own postage? How does that work? Because from the 7th to the 14th, evidently it was somewhere on the 9th or the 7th, I don't know what it was, where this letter was supposedly sent out. It's postmarked on the 7th. How come it took that long? At the post office fault? Or didn't you send them out right away?
So I'm assuming that it just took that long to get to you through the post office, I'm assuming.
Well, I hope so. I hope so, yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Any other public comments? Name and address for the record, please.
Anthony Smith, 4816 Luke Street. I live 3 houses from where the Luke Street is going up to the top, to the north. I've lived there now for 14 years, moved in 2008, and this is now the 3rd time they've tried to build this land. I'm not sure if it's ever made it this far. The first time they tried to build it, there was a pond at the top of Luke Street. Water, deep water, ducks, everything. In order to try to build there, they shoved rocks, dirt, everything in the hole to fill the pond so that they could make the road extend and go north. All that water moved to where they're at now, which is to the east, and that's when we called the DNR in. They said it was a wetland. They weren't supposed to build on it, and all the construction stopped. Well, a few years later, they decided somebody else wanted to try to build on it. They came in, tore all the trees down along Luke Street, pushed them all into a corner of the thing, had fires, did all that stuff, and nothing would ever came of it because we were told that Luke Street was too steep to extend the road, that they were going to have to cut everybody's yards back and lower the road down so it wasn't a ramp going up Luke Street into this new neighborhood. Now, I'm not sure where that all went, but that ended too. It was never talked about, and now we're on our third try to build this same thing. And there's a lot of people in my neighborhood, especially at the top of Luke Street, that are worried that where our neighborhood sits, and I'm not sure if I'm in the right department here.
You're fine.
But the Cedar Falls School District runs east-west across the top of Luke Street. All of our homes are Waterloo School District. Everything to the north is Cedar Falls School District. We're not sure how that's going to affect our home values. I've had people say, oh, it's not a big deal, this and that. I don't believe that because when I built in '08, it was cheaper to build there than it was over by the UNI water tower, which was the same exact area and the same builder. It was $50,000 more expensive to build over there than it was to build where I'm at. So I'm not sure. And what type of home values are we seeing up here with this new area? There's 43 homes. Do we know what it costs? I'm not sure. Of homes or anything. I'm not trying to
No,
bring
you're
the
good.
guy up or nothing, but trying to get information from a lot of the neighborhoods that couldn't come up, you know. So I spent a lot of time writing some stuff down. I didn't get it mailed in. I can leave this one copy here if people want to read the concerns. You know, we just had a lot of issues with this area being built out, you know. It was always somebody trying to make some more money, and we're going to build in all this wetland and get rid of all this area. And a lot of the other concern was the water runoff. Back behind my property, I live to the east side of Luke Street, which backs up to the Waterloo side. All the water runs behind my neighborhood, and there is culverts along the back side there where all the water drains in. I know a lot of the neighborhood has sumps that run nonstop year-round, dumping water out of their basements because it's always been a wetland. Even when they built our neighborhood, it was a wetland. So we just want to make sure that it's done the right way. I know they say they can divert the water, but I know a guy that has three sump pumps in his basement because there's so much water that comes down Luke Street all the time. My other concern was traffic. I know it's been mentioned. Well, they mentioned about the shortening of the streets and narrowing of the streets up there by Matthew and Mark. Nothing stops that traffic from speeding from the bottom of Huntington Road all the way up to the top. It's a quiet neighborhood. It's always been a quiet neighborhood. That's why we've been so successful being able to keep our home values up, keeping people in the neighborhood. A lot of Deere employees come and purchase the houses in the neighborhood, and houses go pretty fast around there because it's such a quiet neighborhood. Now we're opening it to the whole other side of the city, all the way up to Green Hill, and we're going to have traffic from Green Hill all the way through Luke. Nobody's going to use Millennium. They're just going to keep going up and down Luke, which is hard enough to get out of because I don't know if you've ever been there. You get down Luke Street and try to get out of Luke to go to the new roundabout, which is great, by the way. I'll give you credit on that. You can't see coming over the hill. There's traffic that's flying over the hill nonstop. I have to tell my daughter once a week, watch where you're going. There's traffic coming over here. They don't stop. They don't slow down. And it's hard to get to the roundabout. And this isn't going to make it any easier. This is going to make it twice as hard and twice as much traffic to come through that area. Nobody's going to go around that way or around Green Hill when they come right down Luke Street, cut to the cut to the new roundabout and head out towards Menards and all that stuff. So those are some of my concerns. I can leave this here if you guys want to look at it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much,
Thank
Anthony.
you.
Appreciate it. Any other public comments? Name and address for the record, please.
Pat Burke, 1406 Asbury Lane, Waterloo, Iowa. I just wanted to talk about the traffic a second. And Waterloo Planning and Zoning wanted me to say to reach out to them if there's like traffic concerns or something, so that they're not hearing it from me that this was discussed at the meeting. So, like, will you have a discussion about Heartland Hills or not with this development? Because it's been brought up. How does the process work? what I'm wondering. Will you discuss the traffic issue? How will that be taken care of?
We would have that discussion within the commission after public comment. Yes, that would be correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karen.
So I'm not certain about your question. Which traffic issue
Well,
are
I
you
just wanted
discussing?
I forgot to mention earlier that planning and zoning said feel free to reach out to them if you wanted to, and especially about that lot to the south, the Clark property, you know. So they coordinate, and I'm not going down there saying something and then they have to say, hey, Pat Burke's telling us this. So, but the traffic, that is my question. Then will that be addressed? Oh, it's in Waterloo. Will that be addressed within the staff?
So are you talking about the property to the south of this subdivision then?
Not this time, I'm just talking about the traffic
General.
for this project and about the traffic coming out on Martin Matthew on the Heartland,
Yeah.
and about the traffic congestion that we have there all the time. And it's gonna bring more cars in. So how's that process work?
So I don't know if the engineer, Nate, did you guys do a traffic study? So maybe
No,
the
it's
engineer
just
could.
some practical experiences.
No, I meant Nate could maybe comment
Oh,
on the
excuse me,
traffic
I
study
didn't know
that
you
they
were
did.
talking.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, first of all, the traffic engineering is never an exact science. It's incredibly difficult to predict what everybody is going to do. But for the most part, people are going to take the most direct path to a collector or arterial. So based on the existing streets, the size and area that this development, the proposed development occupies, we think most of the traffic generated in this neighborhood is going to go north, out to Green Hill directly. Traffic that's on Green Hill that wants to go south will use and I'm blanking on the street to the west.
Cedar Heights?
Cedar Heights, thank you. With the way that Sager Avenue, which is what Luke Street will turn into on the north end, has to curve back to the east before it connects to Green Hill Road. We think that is going to be inconvenient enough for anybody to try to use Luke Street as a shortcut from Green Hill Road to Heartland. As far as other traffic, if you want to go south, surely there will be some traffic that goes south. There will also be traffic generated from the south that will go north on Luke Street. We think that will balance. It will work itself out. It will effectively be a wash. We don't know until it's built. That's just the nature of, it's not an exact science.
Thank you, Nate.
Did I cover everything on that, or okay, I just want to make sure.
Charles, you can come up and do public comment, but Pat has the floor for the moment, so.
So I guess my last question, would be like, next meeting's December 28th. How's the process work then? When's as soon as this project might come before the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval?
So we have an introduction tonight, and we will gather comments, questions for staff, and then this would come back on to the agenda for the 28th meeting. Pending anything astronomical, I would assume that would be where we would potentially have a vote on this.
And then there'll be a public hearing after that.
So
Like item 1 through 3 today, was it, or 4? Those were agenda items that you voted on.
Yep.
This wouldn't be an agenda item that you would vote yes or no on the 28th, or would it be?
It would be. It would be something that we would vote on the 28th. Yes, sir.
the Planning and Zoning Commission gives a recommendation then to the city council, so then there'll be another meeting at the city, it'll be scheduled for a city council meeting after that.
Okay. Well, I'm not comfortable about the water traffic. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pat. No, you're good. No, name and address, please.
Anthony Smith, 4816 Luke Street. One question I had was this study done before the roundabout was finished? Is that something that we've talked about or discussed?
Nate, go ahead and answer.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
The roundabout was under construction when we did it.
Under construction, so we don't know how much more traffic has changed because of the new roundabout. I just seen it coming here tonight. The roundabout's great because we don't have to stop and worry about getting hit by a car, but it's nonstop coming down the hill from PEC, Walmart, all that through that. I mean, there's probably 30 cars from the roundabout up there to the roundabout down at the bottom. Another question was, has Waterloo been shown this study or been involved in this study of traffic patterns of what's going to happen? Because they can say what they want. Nobody's going north. Everybody's going to come south. Only people that are going to go north are the ones that live up there and they want to go up to Green Hill. Everybody that lives in the neighborhood to the Waterloo side is going to come through Mark and Matthew down Luke Street out to the roundabout to get where they want to be. It's just easier. I mean, and the other one, I didn't know if I could ask you to bring up the map where you had the two ponds. If I can ask, just to, I wanted to show you where they filled in the area.
Our laptops are not working, so we have to use the old school way. Let's see. Is that the one you're looking for?
Oh, you had like two big blue circles.
Oh, the wetlands.
Yeah.
That one.
So this is kind of backwards. So if you flip it to where I live, the big blue circle that says it's a wetland, that used to be the pond I was talking about. That pond is no longer there. They filled it in with everything you can think of. And I don't know how many vehicles have been stuck up there because of it, like the rocks and everything they put in there stuff. So I'm not sure how they can build a road over something that was a pond at a certain time, but it's now shifted to the east because they filled everything in. Like that water is still up there, and that's kind of just where I wanted to show everybody that it was if you could find pictures from the past of 2010 and before, it was a deep pond that there was even kids in the neighborhood that would try to fish, and that's how deep that pond was, and then they just moved it all to the east, you know. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Nate, would you like to speak to that at all?
Yes, that was identified as where one of the wetlands was on the site. It was relatively small, to approximately a half acre. The Corps of Engineers themselves actually were on site and determined that to be a man-made pond, and thus, even though it qualified as a wetland, it was what they call non-jurisdictional. So if that pond was to be filled in or otherwise disturbed, the Corps of Engineers said that they would not prevent anybody from doing that type of work. So the Corps of Engineers, who is kind of the end-all be-all when it comes to the wetland type of thing, that's where it is. Now, because it qualified as wetland, city code still kicks in, and that's where the mitigation comes in, is we're mitigating to the city of Cedar Falls requirements for this particular situation. So that's where we are mitigating on site because of Cedar Falls code. But the pond, as he referred to it, or the identified wetlands, yes, that would be disturbed. It was mentioned that the street would have to go back to the south and be regraded. We are not proposing to do that. It's actually one of the reasons why the large pond, the dry bottom pond on the south side, is in phase one. We need material from that in order to bring Luke Street back down. There will be a crest curve that comes down back closer to natural ground there. The drainage, we clearly have to maintain the drainage and take care of all the runoff within our property or within the development. So that will all be considered during grading and construction. That is intended to go north and be captured and go into our detention system.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Dan, and I live on Asbury Lane, and I want to thank Nate for answering all our questions. I appreciate that. The one thing I would like to ask is, do you guys, I know this traffic study's been directed at the Cedar Falls P&Z, but has Waterloo been notified of the additional traffic on Heartland. I think we kind of buzzed over that a little bit. And
Waterloo
Is
has
it-
been they looked at the subdivision and the traffic study
uh-huh.
as well as the stormwater.
So they're on board with you guys making a decision about the traffic that goes down Heartland then?
They have no objections to the proposal.
Okay, okay, I guess that was my question, and thanks for everything.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, we will close public comment, bring it back to the oh, sorry, Charles, go ahead and come up. Name and address, please.
My name is Charles Camerata, and I live at 4050 Matthew Drive, Waterloo. I went and talked to the Planning and Zoning Commission today. And they're pretty much in the dark about what you guys are gonna do, because they say it's all preliminary. There's nothing written in concrete right now. So they don't know what you guys are gonna do yet. So have you included them, or looked at their studies that they did on that street? Have there been any studies by the Waterloo Planning and Zoning, or the traffic control for Heartland? It's a bad street, it's narrow. Until you live there and have to drive it every day, you don't know what it's like. It's dangerous, especially when you come off Cedar and make that turn on to Heartland. People don't slow down coming down Cedar, and all of a sudden they're gonna turn on and there's a car coming up there. It's winter, there hasn't been a lot of accidents. Maybe there has been, I don't know. All I know is I've had several close calls, and you multiply that times all the people who live there. I imagine a lot of people have had close calls or accidents. I think Waterloo Planning and Zoning needs to be questioned, or ask them if they did a study and what they think about the traffic. You know, you say, oh, that's been done. We talked to them, they don't have any problem with it. I don't believe that after talking to them today.
Michelle, would you like to reiterate what you just said?
It was the staff of City of Waterloo that provided the no objection, and that's up to Waterloo to decide how they would want to process their recommendation to the city of Cedar Falls.
What clout does Waterloo have in determining whether that street is dangerous or not?
So we asked the Waterloo to look over the application and to provide any comments they would have regarding the proposal. And the letter was very simple and straightforward, that they had no objections. And it was from the city engineer in Waterloo.
Well, my own personal view is, and maybe I'm being unfair, is that Waterloo is Waterloo, Cedar Falls is Cedar Falls. This is Waterloo is not their project. Cedar Falls, they want this to go through, both economically, and they talked about the new industrial park and they need housing. I understand that. But the lot sizes are 60 feet wide, and they're gonna dump all these little houses on there. It just seems like you're overloading the area with these small houses, and you're multiplying the people that are gonna have cars, maybe 2 cars per house. Those cars aren't all gonna go up Loop and exit there. A certain number of them are going to go over to Heartland, and it's dangerous to add any more traffic there. I've lived there for 25 years, or more than 25 years. I know what it's like. I drive it every day. Until you've lived there and drive it, you don't know what Heartland is like. I'm sure these other people that live in that area, they know too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Name and address, please.
Pat Burke, 1406 Asbury Lane. One thing that hasn't been addressed is that when Luke meets Sager up there to access Green Hill, that's already a dangerous intersection right there. And now supposedly there's going to be more, most of the traffic, which I don't believe, but there's going to be more traffic going right up there to that turn. That's 45 miles an hour there in Green Hill. And it's tough to get out onto right now and turn off on. If you're gonna put extra traffic there, you're probably gonna have to look at a traffic light. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, we're going to close public comment. We're going to bring it back to the commission. This is just an introduction, so we're gathering questions, comments, anything for staff, because we will move on to this for the next meeting. So anything additional from the commission?
Karen, can you just give us a little information about if we have issues with traffic, how the city handles that, like in terms of change of the speed limit or like any like speed bumps or anything like that?
So what we can do is any questions that you have, we can talk to our city engineering department, and at the next meeting, we can have somebody here from the engineering department to answer those kinds of questions. But
Great.
please, you know, any questions you have, I'll write them down here, and then we can get back to you at the next meeting.
Okay, that's my first question.
Okay.
My next question is, can we have some historical information? I don't know who would provide it, the DNR or whatever, about how they've handled that space in the past, what it looked like historically, and kind of what the intention was for that space initially. I know we had some comments talking about filling in different areas and water, so just kind of getting some information about what the nature looked like.
And then to add to Hannah's comment, I think it sounds to me from Nate's description that the water should actually be improved based on what they're doing, but I guess I would just like some assurances from the engineers that that is indeed the case. It sounds like it is, but if they could just reiterate that for me, I would feel better about it.
Any other discussion?
What is, in the past, our relationship with planning from Waterloo? Is that customary? We just send a letter and let them know and then they just reply? Or is there ever any like back and forth discussion, or how is that typically handled?
So we had asked the applicant to reach out to the city of Waterloo because the streets would be connecting to their streets, and they also needed to handle the stormwater. And so it was up to the applicant to make that reach out to the city of Waterloo and provide the city of Cedar Falls with assurance that the city of Waterloo was okay with the proposal.
Okay.
So.
In cases like this, is it customary for a developer to have a meeting with the residents to discuss the concerns, or does that only happen at public meetings?
Well, certainly, we always encourage developers to have what we call a good neighbor meeting with surrounding property owners, but it is optional for the developer to do that.
Any other further discussion? All right, seeing none, we will move this on to the next meeting. And is there any commission updates, Karen?
So we have one slide left. Get it to the slide. There we go. Not sure what happened to our technology here, but it's not coming up on your screens either.
No.
Right? So it's probably a little bit hard to see. I don't know if Kyle is still out in the back room, but this was to respond, from what I understand, to one of the questions at your last meeting. JD brought forward sort of an update on what's been happening in the downtown character district, and I believe it was Mr. Larson that asked the question about, well, how long has it been taking to approve these projects through our regular process now with the new code, and how much extra time would it be added if the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council would have to review all of these projects. So JD put together this little chart that shows how many days it took to review and approve. Most of these were design review, or the other place was a facade basically change on Main Street. So it took 6 days for staff to review that and approve it. with the with flats on 7th Street, the townhomes that are being renovated. It took us 10 days to review the first submittal, and then they made some additional changes, and it took staff, and this is all, you know, planning and building staff, engineering, to review 10 days for approval. And then the upgrade to 315 and 317 Main Street that was proposed, that's not been built yet, but those are facade changes, interior changes to what used to be Scratch Cupcake. We reviewed that and approved it in 7 days. And then the Cottage Court development, which is a new development then, is the only one that's a new major development. That went through a tech review process, and have reviewed it and sent it back, but there with a few comments, and it's in the developer's hands for making those final changes. So with all these projects, you can see that P&Z and council review would have been required under the previous code for the first 4 items. The Cottage Court, it was under the R3 zoning previously. It's doubtful that Cottage Court could have fit the development standards of the R3 district. The R3 would have allowed a multifamily building there, would have been built instead. So that project just wouldn't have been able, the Cottage Court as it's currently proposed wouldn't have been able to go forward. So we just wanted to bring back that answer. I don't know if Kyle if he has left the building or whether he's hearing that response. We were bringing back that response to answer your questions. And then the second item I have for the update, I think I had emailed the commission. I understand that a few of you would like maybe some additional resources for training or education. And I just, if you want to send me an email or if you want to talk about it tonight, I'm happy to search those resources out and provide you with some ideas on where you could find out that information. And perhaps even at a commission meeting, we could, if we had a small agenda, we might be able to do some training there as well. So do you have anything for me tonight that you want me to list? I know Hannah sent me a list of things already. So if you're not prepared to talk about it tonight, feel free to just send me an email.
Will do. Anything additionally?
That's all I have for tonight.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.